Hello. Good evening,
Good
everybody.
evening.
I'm Nathan, and this is.
Yes, I'm Gary. We are the constitutional movement worldwide, and we try to help people for free and with the solution to the problems that we have, and come with lawful solutions and ideas rather than unlawful that's going to get everybody into trouble type
That
of
is,
ideas.
yeah, one of the main problems we face, I think, is people sort of. I don't know. I think I'm not going to have a go at anybody, but I think it's more a case of sort of being hot-headed and just wanting something to be done, so they just go and do it.
Yeah, without thinking it through the consequences.
No, but what we're going to touch upon tonight, people, is we're going to touch upon. We're going to go through a couple of things because um, we've been getting a lot of people contact us with certain things that relate to courts and certain things. So we're going to go through this SWKV Act. Not a lot. We're just going to touch upon all these lightly because it's just to clarify basically how you relate your position and how you stop getting bound by a lot of these acts and treaties and that, especially acts that people don't understand or don't know they actually come under. Um, Bear with me. I shall first of all share the first one. Um, Have to bear with me, people. I'm not used to doing this too much. Slowly getting there.
That's all that matters.
Yeah. Right, the first one. All right, now this is the SESWI KV Act. Just to show you as well, this is actually from the legislation.gov.uk. So this is official on their website. Quite a lot of people will be familiar with the SESWI KV Act. I'll just read a couple of the recitals that it's got here, but basically gone beyond the sea. Whereas diverse lords of manors and others have granted estates by lease or one for one or more life or lives, or else for years determinable upon one or more life or lives, and it hath often happened that such person or persons for whose life or lives such estates have been granted have gone beyond the seas, or so absented themselves for many years, that the lessers and the revisioners cannot find out whether such person or persons be alive or dead, by reason whereof such lessers and revisioners have been held out of possession of their tenements for many years after all the lives upon which such estates depend are dead. In regard that the lessers and the revisioners, when they have brought actions for the recovery of their tenements, have been put upon it to prove the death of them, which mission planning to such letters. It's a little bit more. Now, what you've just heard there, and there's old English in there. Speaking, it was down to in a certain time of our history, you did have a lot of people who would go exploring. They would work on ships, in either navy or trade ships and stuff like that. Sometimes these people passed at sea, and their loved ones wasn't able to manage the estate because it wasn't in their name, but their life and their livelihood depended on it. I'm not being funny. Once you understand that this act was actually passed after the Black Plague and literally during the Great Fire of London, um, you could argue it's nefarious. You could argue it's not. Some people by that wording wouldn't, because it kind of is in a nice way, sort of saying, well, here's a way to make it easier for these estates to be basically sort of work
But
by other people.
basically, that's saying after a period of time, you can report them dead at sea and lost at sea, and then you be able to claim, whatever you need to claim off it, like
Yep.
insurance or whatever. If you've got them insured, that's basically what that is.
Yeah, or if there's a widow and children, then widow and children can then carry on benefiting from that estate. This is what the trust is about. That's why you're a beneficiary. But there's a lot building up to this. And me and Gary will be doing a show actually about some of the history and some of the things that need to be questions need to be asked really. But moving on, we've got this bit here. Seswi KV remaining beyond sea for 7 years together and no proof of their lives. Judge in action to direct a verdict as though Seswi KV are dead. So, in a nutshell, 7 years or a long period of time, the judge is actually, by this act, ordered to class that person as dead.
Yeah.
And this is why the trust is actually set up. This trust was set up so basically the government can basically manage the estates. I'll just read what it says here. If such personal persons for whose life or lives such estates have been or shall be granted as aforesaid, that means anything before, shall remain beyond the sea or elsewhere absent themselves. So a lot of people don't understand this is kind of what happens when you try and do certain things to take yourself out of the system. In this realm by the space of 7 years together, and no sufficient and evident proof be made of the lives of such person or persons respectively, in any action commenced for recovery of such tenements by the
And
lessers or the
this,
revisioners.
yeah, and this is what gave them the idea for. We're not saying it was nefarious then, but this is what's gave them the idea from this, I reckon, for the birth certificate fraud.
Well, I'm actually going to do the Birth Certificate Act in a minute as well. That's quite interesting. In every such case, the person or persons upon whose life or lives such a state depend, i.e., the wives, the widows, and stuff like that, and the workers, shall be accounted as naturally dead. I mean, that in itself, I'll read that again. In every such case, the person or persons upon whose life or lives such a state depends shall be accounted as naturally dead. And in every action brought for the recovery of the said tenements by the lessers or revisioners, their heirs or assigns, the judge before whom such action shall be brought shall direct the jury to give their verdict as if the person so remaining beyond the seas or otherwise absenting himself were dead. So that's actually on legislation.gov. This is the thing. That is actually the wording. Some people misunderstand this. Some people don't.
Yeah. So
Pretty much.
basically,
Yeah, go on.
yeah. So basically, well, like I said, that I think gave them the idea to do the birth certificate fraud, which is where you may not believe this, ladies and gentlemen, but you are actually registering a stillbirth when you do a birth certificate. You're registering a dead entity, so you then never become a living man or woman unless you know what your standing is. Your mum and dad before you feel you feel your children's not really knowing the scam, and basically you play a character in their system because the real you is pronounced dead at birth, basically.
Well, yeah, that seems to be the thing. I don't know if it's still birthing out, but of course it is because it's copied by Crown copyright. I'll show you. I'll show you the birth certificate act in a minute. I think I've gone for the earlier one, which is I believe the 1857 when it first started. I believe that's when it first started. But this is the thing. When you register a birth, you're actually registering the corporation. So it is the legal fiction that you're actually registering. So
That's what I meant by 2 seconds now. That's what I meant by you registering a stillbirth. If you don't realise it, you're not actually registering. But basically, what you're doing is you never was alive because you're dead at sea from the minute your parents fill that form in. So you're part of the scam from the minute your parents fill that second birth certificate in. You're done.
yep. There is, again, I'll show you, this is actually on the .gov websites, so legislation.gov, and it's saying here again, and we'll read it. This is the older birth certificate. There's actually a new one, I believe, I think it's 1970 odd, the latest one. But this all relates to the Accessory KB Act, and you'll see it in the wording. An act to amend the law relating to the registration of births and deaths in England, and to consolidate the law respecting the registration of births and deaths at sea. Remember what it said in the Seswi KV Act about being dead beyond the sea. Whereas it is expedient to amend the acts relating to the registration of births and deaths in England, and to consolidate the law respecting the registration of births and deaths at sea. Be it enacted by the Queen's most excellent Majesty, by and with the advice and consent of the Lords Spiritual and Temporal and Commons in this present Parliament assembled, by the authority of the same as follows. And this basically tells you that you have to register this child. You have to do it. This is where the trust comes in, because once you register, you give over pretty much, like Gary says, you're giving over. You become a corporation, a dead entity, so that the government can manage your estate. And pretty much, this is why we've got the trust, and this is why you're the beneficiary. You're meant to be the beneficiary. But this basically, I'd suggest people read both of these, Seswi KV and the Birth Certificate Act, because pretty much, it's all linked, but it pretty much tells a very, very, very tall tale, really, of how good they're actually doing, because they're not, and this is the problem. Again, this is on legislation. This is the Births and Deaths Registration Act 1874. There's other ones. Where did I see it? There you go. You've got 1836 to 1874, and they've updated that as far as the 1970s, which is, I think, is a lot of the reasons why people who are a bit older sort of get a bit confused, because they've been changing this nefariously behind our backs, and this is what people don't get. Again, this is where we get the thing person from, because it was changed, it was subverted. The whole thing was subverted. This is what people got to realise. Most people will try and tell you to get rid of the legal fiction, completely things out. I'm not at any point where I could advise doing that. In fact, actually, it would put you outside of a lot of things that you're meant to benefit from. This is the thing. It's like the birth certificate and your trust. Technically speaking, a lot of people, it's done in a way. It's a crown property, so we don't actually own that trust. And this is the thing. This trust was set up by the crown so that we may benefit. But it's often used against us in many ways. Often, what people don't realise is, like, when you walk into a court and use a solicitor or barrister things out, you're automatically classed, like in a Seswi KV, you are dead beyond the sea. So technically, you don't have a voice. This is why, like I said, we've been getting a lot of things lately where people have got like traffic tickets, other bits like that. People going to court, certain things are happening. It's because you've got to learn to define yourself. Because you don't need to get rid of legal fiction. I'm not going to tell you to get rid of legal fiction. I don't know how to do it myself at the moment. There's ways where people have said to do it, but I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Like I said, it technically speaking was sort of set up to benefit. It's just a lot of things when you try and benefit from this trust, you get caught up in. I.e., it's like when you vote and stuff like that, you will get caught up in it. What people don't realise is when they're being called a persons legally. Now, I've said it enough times, so have you, Gary. When you're talking about the person, you can go to a legal dictionary. A lot of people use Black's Law Dictionary. You can refer to it, but most of our courts actually they use the Oxford English Dictionary of Law for interpretation over Black. So it's hit and miss when you use Black's Law in our courts, as far as I know. I've had more success with the Oxford Dictionary of Law than I have Black's Law. America it's different because they do use Blacks, but in my ways, I don't tend to use dictionary definitions for stuff when I'm in court or when I'm trying to put myself as the living man, not the fiction, because that's the thing you're arguing and you've got to prove. You've got to prove you are not that dead entity, you're not that legal fiction. I mean, they trick you a lot to just go under it anyway. So you're committing fraud whilst they're committing fraud. So there's no recourse. But there is a way to do it, you can actually use their own wording. You can use a dictionary. That it may work, it may not. It's limited success in certain ways. But what they cannot ignore is their own legislation. And this is what I've done in some of my cases where I'm trying to do certain things, and it often, I mean, I've had no major success, I would say, but I've often had it where the judge won't make a ruling. It will be a verbal ruling, it won't be a written ruling. So therefore, under Section 58, I think it is a civil procedure, unless it's a written ruling, there is no verdict, there is no ruling. What you've got here, I'll just expand it a bit for everyone. This is the Interpretation Act 1978. Okay, now when they talk about persons, you'll find the actual meaning in here. If we go scroll down, I've actually highlighted it for ease. It says here, right? This is the definition. So when they're saying certain things, this is what it means. Person includes a body of persons, corporate or unincorporate. Okay, it says here 1889 because that's the original kind of document that this comes from. It's where it all spans from. But it says quite clearly there, person include a body of persons, corporate or unincorporate. So you are a corporation. So when you've got your name, and that's the reason why pretty much all businesses, all corporations have their name is always in capitals, because this is what symbolises the corporation. This is what you shouldn't be allowing yourself to be known as, a corporation, because you're not. It's fraud. Okay, and this is how they get you to. Well, they don't. They actually do. They get you to sort of manage by being the trustee of your own trust, which you shouldn't actually be allowed to manage by.
So basically, with that, Nathan, with that, what they're saying in the wording is, a person is a persona, basically. So you're taking on the persona of a corporation when you should be a living man, basically.
Yeah. But that again, legislation.gov. So people can go on that and you can read it for yourself. It's where you'll find a lot of the things. I mean, you start to use things. That they've defined that in their own legislation. So it's very hard for them to argue with their own definition. There is extension to that, like we just see there. I just added things. These are the two documents I've used. We're referring to the fact that I'm not. I mean, they don't like you to do it. They don't like to admit it, but unfortunately, it's not down to them. As most people won't be aware of, but you decide how you're known in court, and this is what a lot of people don't get. You actually decide how you are known to the court. But a lot of people just sort of hire a solicitor or barrister, and they will, on your behalf, put you in, and you'll become a ward of the court. So you'll be basically there as your trust. I mean, I just recently had this argument because I was classed as a litigant in person in one case, not an advocate, because I was actually advocating for myself. I was not a litigant in person because I'm not a person. So this is where exactly this is what I do with most of my stuff. I attack the contract and due process. Now I'm not a person. I can prove I'm not a person by their very own wording. So therefore, due process hasn't been adhered to. The law hasn't been adhered to. It's fraud. So it's their own documents I use.
They're making a false statement.
Yeah, that's pretty much, yes. They're making a false statement. So they're claiming you to be something you're not, which is fraud. Again, this is the Public Bodies Corrupt Practices Act of 1889. Okay, because there was a lot of corruption. This is why they give the excuse, because actually it's problem, solution, reaction. They often create a lot of these problems. The same as if you read most of the legislation, a lot of it they try and say it's like when it's old or it's not in use. But unfortunately, our laws are still very prevalent. But here again, the expression person includes a body of persons, corporate or unincorporate. So again, the expression public body means any council of a county or country or county, of a city or town, any council of a municipal borough, also any board, commissioners, select vestry or other body which has power to act under and for the purposes of any act relating to local government. or the public health, or to pour law or otherwise to administer money raised by rates in pursuance of any public general act, but does not include any public body as above defined existing elsewhere than in the United Kingdom. The expression public office means an office or employment of a person as a member, officer, or servant of such public body. So this is where you see in the wording, you'll see it if you go over it, and this is what we get when we're talking about crown authorities, council, stuff like that. These are all corporations, and this is another reason why you have to be when they go to court, you do any business, shall we say, it has to be done through the corporation, because it's the way they've made it done. Because otherwise, they can't basically do your legal fiction. They can't adjudicate or be an executor of your estate without it being like this, because only you as the person have the right to do certain things. So it's kind of, in a nutshell, it's the government have taken kind of, for better phrasing, it's power of attorney over you and your estate. But they're using, technically speaking, fictitious claims, I'd say, to actually enact this. I mean, considering, proof of your life is a live birth at the hospital. Because this is what a lot of people don't realise. At the hospital, you have a certification of live birth, and then you go and register the legal fiction.
Well, to me, what they've done there, Nathan, is so they can do what they need to do. That's why you have to go from a living man to legal fiction to now a person.
Pretty much, yeah. Pretty much. This is the
if
thing.
you stand under your living man, they cannot do anything with you because you are not claiming to be a person.
Exactly. You're not committing fraud. You're not claiming to be saint. You're not taking up a position which under trust or you're not allowed to take, because it'd be a conflict of interest. You can't benefit from a trust and then be the executor of the trust, because that's where a lot of fraud and a lot of things can happen, and that's technically what happens in court to a lot of people. They just don't know it because it's all done with legalese. On your screens now, you'll see as well. This goes back. This is 2 seconds. I'll show you. Again, this is actually on the. You can find this on the .gov legislation site. This is the Interpretation Act. This is the older one, the 1889. And if we go down again, I mean, this is actually a document I think most people should actually read personally.
And the clue to all this there, Nathan, is in the wording straight off the bat. The Interpretation Act.
Exactly. So, as I keep saying to everybody, it's like I'll put a separate dictionary with my paperwork stuff, and I advise everyone to do that. If you're not able to write a document or write something in a way so that you give no way for interpretation, the best thing to do is then literally put a dictionary and cite the exact meaning of the words you're using. Like, as we always say, it says what it means and it means what it says. But this is the older Interpretation Act, and here it is here. In the construction of every enactment relating to an offence punishable on indictment or on summary conviction, whether contained in an act passed before or after the commencement of this act, the expression person shall, unless the contrary intention appears, include a body corporate. That is not you. That is a body corporate is a corporation. Where under any act, whether passed before or after the commencement of this act, any forfeiture or penalty is payable to a party aggrieved, it shall be payable to a body corporate in every case where that body is the party aggrieved. So basically, they're telling you there. In the older one, they don't cover this through because it basically the same as the EU treaties. They kind of piggyback off each other.
Yeah.
So it's telling you there, if there is a summary offence or anything like that, if there's any party that is aggrieved, you as a man or woman don't get paid. It's a body corporate, so it'll be your legal fiction that they're saying by law has to be paid. This is a big web that unless people act. This is the thing. There's no quick fix to a lot of this. You've got to stop being known as the person. Okay, that's the hard part. But again, you can use their own legislation, their own wording. It does not include you in any of their wording at all, because they don't like to state the man or the woman. I've had this in court. If you ask any judge if they deny you're a living man, most judges will just say, I'm not answering that question. Because once they answer that question, it becomes a whole new different story in a court of law. It means that you are a living man and you are there with all your rights. Because this is what people don't realise. When you're going under legal fiction, this is one of the biggest problems in legal fiction. You actually take away most of your rights. A lot of people don't realise this. It's like registering the birth. You could probably technically argue because you weren't old enough to know or do anything. I mean, it was your parents and they were lied to as well. But a lot of people, like when you vote, and this is why I'm mentioning these certain documents, because it's relates directly to when you vote as well. When you vote as your legal fiction. You vote as the person. You don't vote as a living man. That's why when we get this whole thing, it's like, well, no manifestos ever been kept to. My vote don't count. What I want, it's because technically speaking, you don't have a voice. That you're registering yourself as a dead entity, lost at sea, lost beyond the sea. So we have a lot of this going on, and this is where you do one of your first things to learn is how to redefine yourself. You're not a person. In a legal dictionary, as Gary says, and he'll know, in a legal dictionary, a person is basically it's a facade. He's back. Yeah, a person in a legal dictionary or a law dictionary, it's a falsehood. It's a facade. It's a persona. It's something you play. You act. Yeah, exactly. And this is the thing. This is what a lot of people don't realise. This is why a lot of them is called acts, because you actually act out the fact that you are this dead entity and you're doing the actions of a dead entity. You're not doing the actions of a living man. This is how a lot of people get caught out in court, and this is what they don't want you to
took on
know.
the role of that character, and you're doing it voluntary, basically.
Yeah.
Because, like you've always said, let those be deceived. Be deceived.
That is a maxim of law, and this is what they use a lot. If you're not willing to be deceived, then you will do the research. So if you get a contract, for instance, you're not just going to sign that contract without reading it. You shouldn't do anyway. And that's what they rely on a lot when, for instance, we're seeing it now. When you go onto a website and it says about using cookies and all stuff like that, read the small print. Go in and actually read it and read what they're doing, because they're taking all your information and they're going to use it because you agree to it. But a lot of people just click that button without thinking about it, and you don't realise you've just actually agreed to a contract.
Well, what it is, they're that keen to get on to the next page. It says accepting people, instead of wanting to go in detail and look to see where they're being deceived, or like you say, where it tells them in the very, very small print at the bottom, we're going to do this and we're going to do that and we're going to take all the information we need and what we don't need. They don't bother reading all that. They just click accept, because they're that in that much of a hurry to get to the next page or to see the article. And that's where your downfall is.
The thing, these are all contracts. That's how they trick us a lot. They call it. That's why it's all in small print. Yeah. That is why it's all in small print, because they know it's harder to read for a lot of people. They know people may just skirt over it. So what they're doing is they're putting it there, like me and Gary said, they put it there in plain sight. It's just they try and cover it as much as possible. Like that's why a lot of it will be in small print. And a lot of it will be using legal words. This is why me and Gay keep saying, get yourself an English dictionary and an English dictionary of law. Because when you're reading contracts and you look up a word, if it's a legal word or it looks like a legal word, look it up. Because often your education, your whole education system is designed to actually teach you just to accept this and not question it. There's actually a show me and Gary are going to do about some of this and about our history, because we've been asked to do by quite a few people now. We're going to sort of show you from how and when England got subverted, East India Company all the way up, and it'll involve all this, the SWKV, it'll involve the Birth Certificate Act. It's all linked, and it's all one big long, like we said earlier, Gary. It's kind of one. It's all limbs of the same tree. The same as most of these secret societies that do this. They're all limbs of the same tree. It's just done in certain ways, so it's hard to
It's done
navigate.
in, yeah, it's done in a way so if you find out about the fraud and that they're having, you can only take the one branch down.
Yeah.
Because if it was all linked together easily, then once you found out the fraud, the lot had be gone. But they set it up in such a way that yes, you took that branch down, but now you've got to work your absolute proverbials off to find the next fraud on the other branch, and that's why it's done that way. So you can't take the whole caboodle down in one go.
No, that's exactly it. And this is the problem with being known as the person and what they've done for the persons, because you can't attack it all in one go. Trust me, I've tried. You have to deal with this bit by bit. And this is why me and Gary do what we do for free, and we do it as passion, because it's like we just want people to start sort of acting. And this is what a lot of people don't realise. You can't do these things. You can't pay somebody to uphold your rights. It actually says it quite clearly within our laws. That law, we have to uphold our laws and we have to uphold our rights, and that's half the problem. Because if we don't uphold our English law, i.e., going to court and demanding, look, here's the English law, this override my constitutional rights, my inalienable rights, my freedoms, liberties, and customs override that of the British legislation. Because you've got to remember as well, a lot of people don't seem to realise, no legislation can harm the sovereign. And this is another reason why they like you to go as your legal fiction, because you're not a sovereign. I mean, me personally, I've never voted. People go on about politics. It's never worked. It's not working. Me and Gary have said for a number of years now, what you need to do is actually take yourself off the electoral roll. And then you won't become under the Representation of the People's Act, which is, like I said, we're going to do a show about all this, and we're going to link quite a few things together. And we're going to show you this is how they box you in. This is how they actually take away your rights and trick you to believe that this is the way it should be, and it's not. It's not. But the first step is to understand the difference between the living man and woman and the person, the corporation.
Yeah.
Once you do this, you'll understand a lot more, and once you get on board with it, you'll start to see legal paperwork, all contracts. You'll see in a different light, because you start to understand that, well, I'm not this person. This trust, I'm the beneficiary of this trust, so nothing that is done with this trust can harm me, because this is how they do it. This is how clever they've done it. No legislation can harm the sovereign, but you're not put down as a sovereign. You're put down as a legal fiction. But what they've done in the trust is they've basically said, but if you're the beneficiary, this trust can't be used against you. So when you talk about summary offences and stuff like that, the trust can't be used against you, because the trust is a fiction. So a fiction, I mean, for instance, driving offences, things like that, can a dead entity or a fiction drive a physical thing or move a physical object? No. So, and that is verifiable with their own legislation, as I've just shown you. With their own legislation, you can show that you're a living man. I mean, you can't get behind the wheel of an automobile and go down the King's Road if you're you don't exist. And this is what a lot of people got to get around in their heads. It's like, this is how they've done it, and they've done it in quite a clever way. Because, like I said, when you go to court, your solicitor, your barrister, or the judge, they'll do some.
It's the same as everything.
Little trick. Well, I think Gary's paused. But this is what they do. They trick you to become the trustee. So you're actually
The
no
government,
longer the beneficiary.
well, exactly like Nathan, and it's like the government itself, the government as the body, the government cannot make any decisions or anything because it doesn't exist.
Exactly.
Only on paper. So this is why you should. This is why we ask them who is authorising this and doing this, because we need these people to step forward. We need this man or woman to step forward and take responsibility for these actions, because this is unlawful, and that's why they never will.
Well, this is
That's why they never will, ladies and
yeah.
gentlemen.
Well, this is why I think they've changed. Because I said this back in the Dragon days, and a lot of people just ignored me because some other people said different. But this is why I truly believe that they've changed the nature, should I say? I think nature of it is probably the better word of a judicial review. See, it used to be that you could actually do a judicial review and it would be attacking the government. It would basically be saying this body corporate has done something wrong. But judicial reviews have actually been now changed. It's been this way for some years, and I've been trying to tell a lot of people about this. When going for a judicial review, you can no longer attack the government and say the government's wrong. All you can attack is say, well, they didn't mean to do harm. Here's a clue. They didn't mean to do harm, but harm has come from this act, so therefore it can be repealed or avoided. And that's how they do it. And that's the long way round of doing it, because a lot of things, like I said, if everybody comes off the electoral roll, if everyone sort of starts standing up and going to court, putting themselves as the man or the living woman, not keep going
Because
along with the persona.
the reason you can't do that, Nathan, is because to do that, you would have to attack the living man or woman who has done that act. And then that exposes the fraud. That's why you can't do that.
Exactly, and they don't want you to do. They don't want you to know this. They don't want you to bring this in court. That's why often judges will get up and walk out if there's certain people there that know this stuff, and then puts it on the judge. Because if you know how to cite the fact that the court and the judge and then people in that court are actually committing a crime and are personally liable for their actions, because again, you get this phrase gets bandied about a lot. It's sort of like, obviously with the Second World War, doing your duty is no excuse if you know it's wrong. So when a judge swears an oath to uphold the coronation oath, because that's one of the two oaths a judge swears, they actually are meant to discharge Her Majesty's constitutional duties. So in other words, they're meant to preserve and uphold our ancient customs, freedoms, rights, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But what they've done is they've tricked people to, instead of being English, an English sovereign, they trick you to be a British citizen. Now, a British citizen means you are part of a corporation, and therefore you cannot be a living man or woman. You can only be the fiction, because you can't be within that corporate body corporate without being a fiction. And this is
Hence,
what people.
hence that's why you've all got British passports, ladies and gentlemen. Wake up, please, wake up, because this is what the roads are taking you down, and you're all doing it, and you're all walking into the abyss, and you're doing it voluntary. I've never known anything like this in my life. Seriously, haven't. You need to wake up and do the research and see that you're not British. Britain wasn't formed till 1801, and it's a corporation.
That's me. We're going to do a show about the history of the corporation and how it's affected England and gone into Britain, stuff like that. While we're talking about this as well, and we're on about certain documents, I don't know if many people understand, but the government, the British government, and here again, here's your clue in the differences, and again, it's wording and definition. The government are about to, I believe it's next week, I think they're bringing it out. The government are about to try and release a British Bill of Rights, not the English Bill of Rights, 1688 or 1689, but a British Bill of Rights. And they're using it, and again, like most times they do, this is going to catch a lot of people out, because they've tied something that we wanted, the reason why we left the EU and the reason why we've been protesting down Dover, stuff like that, they've tied it to that, so people are going to think, oh, this is a very good thing. But again, we don't need a British Bill of Rights. We have an English Bill of Rights that actually protects all of our rights, and will do a lot more than this one will. I'm going to show you a newspaper clipping, and I want you to pay attention to the wording that is used, because again, it's all in the wording. They pretty much tell you openly, but you've got to actually sort of take it upon yourself to actually look and see. I'm going to blow this up big, so I'm going to get rid of me and Gary quickly, and you'll see. Right, migrants entering UK illegally to use ECHR protections under British Bill of Rights. Okay, we have an English Bill of Rights. It was used in the Gina Miller case in 2017. So why we need a British Bill of Rights when quite clearly, again, it says here, migrants entering UK illegally. Okay, so what the government's trying to say is, right, well, we can stop the European, because basically it's all based, a lot of it's on, I believe it's Section 8, the right to life and family. But again, look at the title: entering the UK illegally. Now, it's illegal entry, so they don't have the right to enter. They're entering illegally. So for the European Court of Human Rights to say, well, I don't care about the crime, you'll do this. And again, this is all to do with the Human Rights Act, okay, which is always to be taken into consideration, and which the EU and the UN expect everybody, every country to, how do they say it in their thing, strive for, okay. Is it. Migrants who enter the UK illegally by small boats, lorries, or planes face curbs on their ability to fight deportation by claiming it breaches their human right to family and life under new British Bill of Rights. Again, it actually does that under the English Bill of Rights and the Magna Carta and our laws. Because they entered illegally, they committed a crime to do something. When you commit a crime, you don't get to profit from that. So entering this country illegally, they don't get to profit by having a family and having benefits and a life here if they've done a crime to do so. You can't benefit from a crime. That is one of the bases of our spirit of law. This is it. Officials and lawyers are examining how the new bill, due to be unveiled next week by Dominic Raab, don't trust that man, the Justice Secretary, could be used to restrict Article 8 claims to a family or private life under the European Convention of Human Rights. Now remember, it's Britain that took on the European Convention of Human Rights, the Human Rights Act. England never did, because it's not in English law, it's in EU law and British law. And this is where we need to start defining ourselves properly, not as the British.
We've got inalienable rights. We've got unalienable rights that override human rights.
Exactly, they very much do. But again, they trick you to make that decision yourself. Carry on. They account for some 70% of cases where failed asylum seekers or foreign national offenders. See, look, they're telling you here, these are offenders. These are people committing crimes, and for some reason, the human court, European Court of Human Rights, are basically saying, yeah, ignore the crime, because it's like it with mens rea. Mens rea, it does allow you under mens rea your mental intent. It allows you if you knowingly commit a lesser crime to stop a greater crime. And this is what they use. It's like, well, entering into the country illegally is lesser than them sort of, I don't know, not having the right to life. But again, 11 to 13 countries they pass with no war. That kind of negates all that. Again, Magna Carta, I mean, Bill of Rights, Declaration of Rights. These are all the documents that actually prove that they can't do this. And like I said, Gina Miller case in 2017 says a lot. I suggest everybody go and read the comments and the commentaries for that case, because it is quite telling.
This to me sounds like it's the Human Rights Act in through the back door to get rid of the Bill of Rights.
Well, this is the thing. This is what the human rights did. The human rights set and the EU. The whole reason for joining the EU was basically to override every single country and have it come under one constitution for the whole of Europe, decided solely by 15 unaccountable, unelected bureaucrats. But we carry on challenge to move it. They are believed to have represented the majority of the successful objections by 130 migrants against their removal to Rwanda this week. It's about narrowing the circumstances under which people could claim Article 8 and successfully challenge a deportation, said government source. So, again, they're going to trick you to uphold this British Bill of Rights, believing that, because most people read it, if you read the headlines and you don't really go into the wording and the context of what they're saying, most people think that this is very good and it's going to stop or sort out a situation we want sorted. But it says it quite there. It's about narrowing the circumstances. So these people will still be coming in. Remember, our government signed the Barcelona Declaration of 1995, which guarantees certain acceptances by law. But it's to narrow the circumstances. So all they're going to do is say, well, you can't just claim anything come in. It's got to be done. And think, well, I'm going to ask this. We have immigration laws and we have immigration that works. The only time it doesn't work is when we have illegal immigrants, because it just collapses. And this is the point. What's so wrong with doing it? Because this has always been my problem. How you've got migrants that actually come here, they jump through all the hoops, they do all the paperwork, they do everything that's asked of them, And then you've got these people that just decide, now I'm going to ignore all that, I'm just going to go. It kind of makes a mockery of the actual migrants we've got in this country that have come here to actually have a life and to join in society. These people basically said, I don't care about your rules, don't care about your laws, I'm coming to live there whether you like it or not. That's basically what they're saying when they enter illegally. And they use the Human Rights Act.
And you know why this is being done? The British Bill of Rights, Nathan. If people use the common sense and read between the lines, basically what it's happening here is they are replacing Bill of Rights with these rights. But we've already told you earlier, ladies and gentlemen, the British is a corporation. It's a legal fiction. It's a dead entity. It cannot have any rights because it's dead.
And this is the thing. Once you go under the British Bill of Rights, they can change it at will because it's not your rights.
It'll be open to interpretation, the same as the Human Rights Act is.
Well, if they get everyone
and
to
the
sign
Bill
up
of Rights was not put there to be open to interpretation.
No. Same as Magna Carta. Magna Carta's a treaty. We get a lot of people arguing that, but I've already proven that Magna Carta is there, alive, in full force, even though some people claim wild accusations like everyone involved it was French, so it's not English. I think people need to learn their history a bit better. But it's it. The bill will replace the current Human Rights Act. So they can't do away with the English Bill of Rights because they do not have the. I mean, even though it's an act part of his act, they can't because again, you see, so they're going to try and override it with the British Bill of Rights. It says here, the bill will replace the current Human Rights Act, which currently enshrines the European Court of Human Rights in British law. British law, not English law. And it's designed to give British courts, not English courts, because people got to understand this, only English courts are lawful and only courts that uphold English laws are lawful. Greater powers to restrict and limit interventions by European judges in UK affairs without leaving the European Court of Human Rights. So they're telling you there, they don't intend to leave the European Court of Human Rights because they're all in it together. What they're going to do is try and put something in that kind of placates everybody. So it's going to give the illusion that the British government have done something about the problems we face and what we want to do. But at the same time, all it's going to do is just narrow it slightly, and it's going to create a whole new world of legislation, other bits where it's just going to be even worse, in my opinion.
So,
this is why.
So basically, they've done with this what they did with your unalienable rights. They couldn't attack your unalienable rights and contravene your unalienable rights, so they set up their own, the Human Rights Act. And they've done exactly the same here because they cannot attack the English Bill of Rights. They've set up their own British Bill of Rights to try and override it, the same as they have with the Human Rights Act and your unalienable rights. It's exactly the same.
Here we go, and this is the thing, right? This tells a big story itself. It was a last-minute ruling by a lone out-of-hours duty judge. So that judge has been called up by somebody, who we don't know, but he wasn't on duty. He was out of his hours, so he was called out of hours to come in and make this ruling. So out-of-hours duty judge from the European Court of Human Rights on Tuesday night that grounded the first deportation flight, which had been due to fly 7 asylum seekers to Rwanda. Mr. Raab has already signalled that the right of foreign offenders to use the Article 8 right to a family life will be curtailed in the new British Bill of Rights. Well, they say again, foreign offenders. We have laws for a reason, and you cannot profit from a crime. It's part of our basis of our laws. So again, they're just ignoring it, and they're just riding over it. This is why people do it. I mean, it's like the Magna Carta. The European Court of Human Rights can't actually say anything. We cannot be governed by. It's in Magna Carta. We can't be governed by any foreign prince or prelate. And no. The EU, the European Court of Human Rights Act, these are all foreign prelates, same as the UN. They're foreign prelates. They have no authority. And this is why a lot of times, if you ask them to prove their authority, they can't, because it can't override that of yourselves. Officials are considering how this could be extended to migrants who enter the UK illegally. The government's Nationality and Borders Act, which is due to take effect within weeks, that's another document you really want to read, especially if you're going to be going down to Dover and stuff like that, so you're all clued up, has already increased the penalty for illegal entry from 6 months to 4 years. But, so they come into this country, they can get a penalty for illegal entry from 6 months to 4 years. But in that time, they have been on this shore long enough that they can then just by proxy be given a citizenship. Again, British citizenship. Birth Certificate Act, go back to that again. That relates to anybody born in England. So if you're born in a different country, you're not classed as thing. That's why I say it doesn't matter about your colour, your creed, anything like that. If you're born in England, we all come under the same thing. It's only these immigrants and other demographics that seem to be getting this preferential treatment. Under one option, the bill might ensure that a new category of failed asylum seekers, again, failed asylum seekers, so they failed. So when they come over, they didn't have the criteria to actually be an asylum seeker. Could not use
So why
Article
are they
8.
still here?
Exactly. But they could not use Article 8 to challenge deportation if they met a certain threshold, such as length of sentence. A second option would set out a legislative scheme, so a legislation yet again, defining where the government's right to deport, the government's right. So again, this is telling you, no, we have a right to say what happens to our country and what laws we uphold. That's why we need to start upholding our laws and keep upholding these British corporations' laws. Government's right to support their public interest would outweigh their right to use Article 8 to fight the removal to a third country. A third option would be to prevent a decision to deport a failed asylum seeker being overturned unless it was obviously flawed. Now, again, look at the wording, obviously flawed. Well, who decides that? Stopping the courts from submitting their view for that of the government. Mr. Raab has already indicated that the new bill will give ministers powers to ignore last-minute injunctions by European judges, like the one that halted the Rwanda flight. Okay, we can anyway. We're out of the EU. He is proposing that because they are not grounded in the ECH, European Court of Human Rights, but part of the court's internal rules, they would not have a legally binding effect under UK law. See, there we go again. Do you see the difference in the wording? British, now they're using UK law. Again, we discussed on a previous one. If you read some of the documents, you'll see there's different spellings because that's Old English and New English. They changed the grammar and they changed spellings to do this. So it's now more of you talk in legal rather than English. Power in the hands of British courts. Again, we should have English courts, not British courts. Scottish should have Scottish courts. Welsh should have Welsh courts. I've always said that, and the Scottish pretty much do because they have Scottish acts and whatnot. The bill is also expected to give the Supreme Court primacy. So it will our Supreme Court can overrule European judges. Well, it already did, and this is what a lot of people don't think. Look at the again. We'll go back to the Gina Miller case of 2017. Okay, the Gina Miller case of 2017. Quite clearly, the Supreme Court overrules that of the European boat and stuff like that. Basically, it states even in the commentary stuff like that you can't, it can't be done. You can't subvert the will of the people. You can't subvert the law. The main overriding aim is to make sure power lies in the hands of British courts on how they balance that, what the European court dictates, and what actually happens in the UK as a result, said a source. So here they're telling you again, at no point are we getting Brexit. At no point are we getting out of the EU. We are tied. Yeah. It's just only by name we're out. And they're telling you right here. It will just put a balance of what the European court. So you're going to get to the point where these judges, as Gary says, a lot of this is all open to interpretation. But if a judge wants to rule with the European court, he can. If he wants to rule with the British laws, he can. This is no. I'm sorry, but this is just insane. Lawmakers will also be empowered to interpret European court rulings against the UK in a way that respects the country's laws and traditions. Okay, laws and traditions. Now, country. The UK is the United Kingdoms. Okay, it's not one country. So they're telling you there. Scotland will be able to do it. We should be able to do it. Laws and traditions. This is the thing. Then again, define traditions because I would say customs and stuff like that. So they're telling you here. This is a choice, and this is what we think. Unless if we keep voting, if we keep doing this, we're upholding their laws, not ours. For example, although European courts upheld the rights of prisoners to vote, the UK only allowed it to be extended to offenders on home detention curfews. The bill will also enshrine freedom of speech in law to protect against political correctness and the advance of European-style privacy laws. It will also legislate for the quintessential British, it's quintessentially English actually, right to a jury trial. It's not quintessentially British, it's quintessentially English. See, this is what I mean. They just change the wording, and then people think, yeah, well, that's fine, that's seen, because they've changed our history. Again, me and Gary will be doing a program on all this. The number of migrants who have reached the UK by crossing the English Channel in small boats has reached more than 11,000. Well, I can say it's a lot more than 11,000. But again, this is the thing. This is where people are going to have to start understanding that we are not British. That's a corporation. I know this may upset quite a few people, but it's not us.
And the Union flag, the Union flag that everybody flies so proudly, is also the corporation flag. It is their flag. It's the flag of the East Indian Tea Company. Go and look it up.
Yes, the very company that flooded China with opium and that lot and created a mass epidemic of addicts and stuff like that. The same corporation that seized lands and stuff like that. All this was done under the British East India Company. But when it all comes down to it, like the whole world does, it's never the British corporation that's blamed. It's the English people that are blamed. And this is how they keep flitting from one to the other, one to the other. It's like, so they don't want to be accountable. So we have to hold them. This is this thing. The rest of the world can't hold them accountable. We have to. And this is one of the
They had all the wealth. They stole all the wealth, all the assets, and took all the plaudits. And the people had all the guilt and the shame. And like now, you've got to apologise for this, and we want reparations for that. And we didn't do it. It was the corporation that did it. Nothing to do with English, Welsh, and Scottish and Irish people. It was a corporation called Great Britain that did it. It was that Union flag. And if you follow the Union flag, I'm sorry, you cannot be both. You cannot be that Union flag and then anti-government. It's impossible because it's their flag.
Yeah, it's a maritime flag. It's what the penultimate flag became from when the corporation kind of settled. Like I said, me and Gary are going to do a lengthy video to talk about this corporation, how it came about, what it does. But it was sort of kind of instead of being, because it got to the point where the corporation around the world couldn't have its standing army, couldn't do certain bits like that, so it kind of settled itself and became the government. And as Gary just said about stealing the wealth, it actually made the Queen the head of the company, and it's what actually created her to be the Empress of India. And it's how they actually managed to take all the wealth from India. As I said, this is a business. This is not a government like people think. I mean, let's face it, since the ECA 1973, it's been a tumultuous assembly. They're committing treason, sedition, and fraud. So this is a company. And the East India Company has been named by different things because as soon as it gets caught out, it just changes its name. Like I said, we see this today. You change the CEO, change the name of the company, and it's business as usual. And this is all they've done. This is a company, and this is how you've got to start thinking of it. This is a company. I mean, people see it all the time. It's like when Trump was president, and they said he run the country like it was a company because it is a company.
That's what he was.
Same thing as us. Yeah, he was basically the head CEO of the American company.
And this is what you've got to get your head around, ladies and gentlemen. Boris Johnson is not the Prime Minister well, he is the Prime Minister of Great Britain, but he's not. He is the CEO of the Great British Corporation. That is a business. He's a CEO, not the Prime Minister. His job as a Prime Minister is fake.
Well, this is the thing. Again, the clue's in the wording, Prime Minister. So he's the first administrator of that company.
Yeah.
But this is what they don't like to tell you. This is why they shorten words. This is why they changed our language. I prefer it in the
Yeah.
old style because it was more melodic. It was kind of thing. But this
Yeah.
is what people mean. This is how you think. This is why you need to get into this and understand. Once you understand it, it's not hard to understand. It's not hard to actually do.
Mm.
They try and make it sound complicated so you don't undertake it yourself. You try. It's like going to court. They try and make it so hard for you that you think, well, I'll get a solicitor because they know what they're doing. And it's like, well, they know exactly what
Yeah,
they're
they
doing.
do know what they're doing. They're working together under the bar. So
Yep,
your fate is sealed 99.9% of the time before you even enter the court.
yep. Again, because they can't uphold your rights for you. All they can do is go in there and uphold the trust and the rights under the
Yeah.
trust. But unfortunately, they help the court make you the trustee of your trust, not the beneficiary. So therefore, penalty can go against you. This is like
Yeah.
with the acts I've just shown you. This is why it has to be done it has to be paid to a body corporate
Yeah.
because it's the only way they can do it.
Yeah.
And this is where common law comes back in because once you get common law come back in, you can't do harm to the man. You can't
Yeah.
do harm to the sovereign.
And that's what we've been doing with the last two cases. Mine with this tenant case, and yours with the family court case. And we've done it, and we've got it back in there, and we've won. Well, yours is still ongoing, but I won
Yes.
mine, and that's basically what we are doing. People think we don't do nothing behind the scenes, but that's what we are doing. We're proving these things.
It's like you say,
Now,
take one of my cases, because I've been doing a few, but take one of my cases. The judge, there's been two things. The judge will not submit a written ruling. So by their own rules in civil court, Rule 58, the judge has never ruled. The judge makes no ruling. So it's kind of, like I said, it's a constant fight because I need that judge to make a ruling so I can attack the judge. But
yeah.
they won't
And
make
he
a
knows
ruling.
that. That's why he ain't doing it.
But this is the thing. It's like this is where if everybody goes in and does this, the courts are going to have a very very hard time because eventually the courts are going to have to either admit the fraud or they're going to have to start going by the right thing. And it is a massive fraud. Like I said, me and Gary are going to do a show and we're going to do a history of all this so we can show you how nefarious and the fact that this is all these things are planned well ahead. If you think what's happening with this Bill of Rights and that lot wasn't planned, um, I would say as soon as they realised that we was coming out of the EU, I think talks and plans started to get this Bill of Rights. Because, like you said, if you that's a newspaper. If you read it and you listen to the wording, and it's the wording they put out because it's all controlled, it's telling you they have no intention of stopping the European Court of Human Rights. No need that they have no intentions of coming away from it. All they intend to do is try and narrow the scope of that court. But like I said, it'll be given to some, not given to others. It's like the Human Rights Act. It's actually, as you said, is to be taken into consideration, not there as like unalienable rights. And this is why they don't want people knowing their inalienable rights. This is why our education was subverted and everything was done. It was so we don't know these things, so we're not taught these things, so we go along with the subversion. We
Yeah.
commit the fraud with them.
Yeah. Now, before we go, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have a brief chat about all these things. We're going to block this road. We're going to block that road. That is unlawful what you're going to be doing. It's
Yeah.
much more simpler if people, I'll give you an example where you can do all this lawfully, peacefully, no comebacks, and also you're not going to be putting any, because when you're doing what you're doing, you're trying to get the people on side. You're not going to get people on side when you're blocking roads and they can't get to work and that they're going to turn against you. The easiest way
It's
to
not.
do this
2 seconds. Can I just
this.
jump in there? Could I just jump in quickly as well? Because me and Gary are not attacking anyone. This has been tried before. Trust
Yeah,
me. The movement's been going for a lot longer than people think. People have been acting a lot longer than people think. This has been tried before. Um, when you block the motorway, like Gary says, you're not just blocking people from getting to work and hospital appointments. You could have someone in that traffic jam that's got cancer that needs to get to an appointment. If that's stopped, he probably might not get he or she might not get one for another 6 months to a year. In that time, the cancer may go too far. So you've got to take all this into consideration because you could be causing harm or loss of life, i.e., ambulances. If you all block the motorway, if you stop an ambulance from getting through, or even attempt to do so, and the police say that you will face charges because you are endangering life. And this is what you've got to understand when you're doing these things.
Yeah.
And Gary, I said,
Right.
me and Gary, and Gary come up with a very, very good way of doing it.
Yeah. And it's as simple as this. Instead of blocking the motorways, ladies and gentlemen, you want the prices to come down at the pumps, do you not? So I don't know which one you want to do because, it's up to the people individually to decide for themselves. But you all need to come together as a collective and say, right, we are no longer going to use BP or SO or Texaco, whichever one it is, and then you spread the word, and then for a month, every single person, sorry, that's the wrong word, we're not a person, every single living man or woman should jump in the car and drive past whichever garage you're going to decide to boycott, and don't fuel up there. And if everybody did it, example, BP, if everybody says, right, from Monday, nobody use BP to get the petrol anymore, because you're not going to be causing any harm to yourselves, because there's plenty of other, and it's all a similar price at the moment. So, but what you will do is you'll cause BP a hell of a lot of damage, and you're not going to damage any. You're not going to damage any fellow man or woman that needs to get to work or appointments. You're not breaking any laws because freedom of choice.
Yep, you're not risking life.
No. So you all pick a garage, well, a company, whether it be BP, SO, and for a month, you don't use that garage. Now, these people in that garage are used to selling so many thousands of litres or whatever of diesel, petrol every week. So next week, when the container comes to replenish the petrol, they've still got all the petrol from the week before. And this is going to happen in every single BPS, however it is you decide to blockade.
Yep.
And then these will feel the pinch, these people. Then they'll have no choice but to bring that petrol down or scrap it.
Well, this is the thing. What you're likely to cause is competition. So you'll have, like, say, like Esso or Shell. They want to lower the prices of their petrol to get rid of their reserves because apparently
because they've got another load wanting to come. They've got another load they've got to get in. So they'll start dropping their prices. Then you all start going to Esso or BP or whatever it is you've been doing this action against. And then once you all start going there, all the ones you've been going to the last month, they'll start seeing a drop in their profit. So they will have to start competing with this company you've just gone back to. And that's as simple as it is, because at the end of the day, it's a dog-eat-dog world. And we have to show these people we are not dead entities. We are living men and women who have a voice, and we are the consumer. And they need us more than we need them.
Exactly. If we don't buy their product, they don't get their profit. They are actually out of pocket. It's like Gary says, a lot of people will laugh at this and go, oh, but that won't really do anything. It will if you, say, over 12 months, you do one a month for 12 months, for instance. They still have to pay storage fees. They still have to pay wages. They still have to pay a lot of electricity and all the other bits. So they're still going to have to pay this, and they're going to have a lot of petrol that they ain't shifting. So at some point, these companies are going to have to compete with each other to try and get the customer, and that's what you do as a consumer. You go and block the roads, you're not really doing any more damage because you're still going to be going to these petrol stations. But it's like with voting and stuff like that. If you're on the electoral roll and you're voting, you're agreeing to all this. So stop agreeing to it. So if you don't agree with it, then do a bit of research. Pick the garage with the highest prices, with the highest profit margin, and say for a whole month you get your whole group, or you get any sort of thing you've got, and you try and get everybody to do the same thing. So if you all walk away from this company and go, right, we're not using you, And some people may have to go out the night before and get petrol from a different garage to go to work in the morning because it's the only one on their way or whatever that. But this is you're never going to change anything without some sort of hardship. You're going to have to do certain things to get this action. But once you start doing that, once their profits start dropping, because they'll still have to have the same, they'll still have the same payout. It's just their profits are drop. If you do it in the right way, and you get, I mean, you don't need the whole country to do it, but if you get enough people to do it, it will affect them. It will affect them.
What you can't have is everybody who wants to do it. You can't have 30% boycotting SL, 30% boycotting BP, and 30% boycotting Texaco. You've got to have all the 90%ers doing it, example, to boycott the one company, just the one.
Exactly. That's why the suggestion is that you pick the one with the biggest profit margin and the highest prices, and you make a list of say the top 10, and then you just basically once a month just boycott one, and then the second one, then the third one, and if you do that every month and go between them all, they're all going to have losses. They're all going to have reserves of petrol because they're slowly going to, like Gary says, they can't unload the tankers because the tanks in the petrol stations are still full. So that tanker either sits there with that petrol because you hear what they say it has a shelf life. So they're either going to have to admit it doesn't have a shelf life so we can stop all these fuel crises, or they've got to stand up to the fact that petrol does have a shelf life, and then they've got to start going, well, we've got to get rid of this because we're getting reserves, it's not selling. And that's what they've done to get all the little shops out of the way. They created big corporations and they just basically priced out the little man. So we can do the same to them. You just price them down. If you will not pay that, you won't go there.
And you can do exactly the same to the big corporate shops, Asda, Morrison's, Tesco, Sainsbury's. You can pick one of them, say Asda, everybody boycott Asda. You can't say, oh, well, I'd like to go to the big corporate shop. Well, you still can. You've still got the other four to go to. Or maybe it's Morrison's you want to boycott. But do the same with them. All decide which one it is you're going to be and start hitting them and start fighting back. Because you can do it lawfully and peacefully where you can't get into trouble because everybody's got the freedom of choice.
Yes.
And this is how you do it. Yes, this is how you do it, ladies and gentlemen. And trust me, it will work. Yeah. But you've got to all be on board with it all.
It's exactly what got most of the small family-run shops out of the game because everybody voted with their feet. They couldn't afford, they didn't want the prices of these small shops because it cost the smaller shops a bit more money, so they have to put their product out for a bit more because they can't buy in bulk. And this is why the whole buying in bulk was done. It was so normal men and women who have shops were going to be priced out. And that's what we did. We stopped going to our local butcher, we stopped going to our local fruit and veg shop, and we went to the big supermarkets because they was cheaper. And that's basically what you'll be doing with the petrol stations and the shops. You're going to be voting with your feet. You won't be going there. If you do not enter in there, because you've got to remember, garages, they have food like chocolate bars and drinks and other bits like that. They have fridges they've got to keep running. They've got all this. And if you vote with your feet, the same way we do with politics, if you vote with your feet and walk away, they've got no choice. You have the power, not them.
Yeah, exactly. And if you do it, ladies and gentlemen, not only will it give you a sense of satisfaction that you are doing something, but you will see a change. You will see that change because they've got no option. Like Nathan says, you're going to have stuff out of date past the sell-by date. You're going to cause them a hell of a lot of hassle. And you're sending a clear message to the government. Listen, we might have let you get away with it for 2 years, but we are all awake. We are all living, breathing men and women. And we're fed up of your shit. And we ain't taking it no more. If that's what you want to do and you think we're little easy pushovers, you're going to see exactly the opposite.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing. It's like with electoral. It's all the same. It's like with the electoral roll. It's like it's called people power for a reason. Okay. We are the law. We are the people. We have more power than them. We've got to remember. It's like they've done a lot to try and convince us that a tumultuous assembly that calls themselves the British Parliament have more of a say in our lives than we do. That politics is everyday life. This is why they try and make it boring and turn everyone away from politics, because then we just let this little den of thieves and this tumultuous assembly just legislate and do everything on our behalf. And that's what you do. This is why me and Gary have always said the same thing. come away, get off the electoral roll. A lot of people go, oh, but you've got to be in it. That's the subversion. That's the trick. They tell you you've got to be in it to have your say, and then this is how you think. Nothing changes. Nothing changes.
No.
I'm not being funny. Take Labour or Tory. They've been pushing the European paradigm, or should I say. Regardless, it doesn't matter what side you vote. And this is the same in America, same as here. It's a two-party system. So whichever one you vote for, you're going to get what they want, not what you want. I'll say that again. Can anyone show me one manifesto that people voted for that have actually been completed? I mean, we'll take for instance the referendum. Now, the referendum is the people getting together and the majority spoke, and it should be implemented. But what we're getting now, as you see with some of the documents I've shown you tonight, the new British Bill of Rights, they don't intend to give us Brexit. They don't intend to remove us from the Europe, or the European Union, should I say. And here's a clue as well. You've got the British Union Jack, and you've got the European Union. All these are clues. You mean you can see how this is all linked within the wording.
Yeah.
And this is why another reason why Parliament seems to think they're sovereign, because they basically agreed in 1970 with Ted Heath and that lot, his delegation, that lot, they decided to try and get rid of our sovereignty, which is unalienable, by the way, cannot be bought, cannot be transferred, cannot be given away. So they just convince you. This is why it's called an act, because you act out the facade, the fiction. That's why Parliament can't. I mean, despite what they think, Parliament can't make common law, and Parliament can't make constitutional law, because it's from the people, because it's the laws that we agree we're actually going to live by. It actually says this in the House with and many other things. They're allowed to legislate. I mean, Gary, you remember this in the Corona case when Temi was talking about the judge himself. It's the Bill of Rights that actually allows government to legislate. Doesn't I mean they had to have a constitutional law to help them legislate, but statutes are not laws. It would just be called a law.
And when the legislation, don't forget when they're legislating, Nathan, if it doesn't fall within the constraints of the Constitution, i.e., if it causes loss, harm, or injury to, the people, they're not supposed to implement it or push it through.
That is void. But this is the thing: when people acquiesce, and a lot of people do without knowing, that it goes unchallenged, and this is the whole point. If you really want to challenge what government's doing, I mean, we have it. We have Article 61 has been invoked. That means people can undergo diffidatio. They can actually overthrow the crown, and by proxy overthrowing the crown, you overthrow her parliament, because it's Her Majesty's Parliament. But you've got to understand, Her Majesty is the head of the British Corporation and the Empress of India. So that we're being run by a corporation. This is not a monarchy, as she should be. So this is why Article 61 would do a hell of a lot, because it would actually take Her Majesty, and she could do two choices, or the successor. They'll have two choices. They can carry on with the corporation that we are doing away with, which means they have no authority, or they can actually come back under the proper crown. They can actually start basically applying themselves to the oath of office to which they are actually placed. Because we do place them. If you read the coronation oath, there is a part where it does say, and it's kind of talked about like it's just kind of ceremony now, but there's actually a part of the coronation oath which clearly states that if we wish to deny the crown to somebody, we can. So when people go, oh, get rid of the crown, get rid of this, you're going to get rid of every single protection, everything you actually have to stop them doing this. You're going to get rid of the crown and allow the corporation that's been doing all this to take over. Because that's what happened with the Act of Settlement in 1701. The British Corporation, the East India Company, settled. It settled. So it's kind of an occupation.
Like say, you've only got to look at it, all the clues are all in the wording. So, but we'll leave it there, Knife. But please, ladies and gentlemen, let's start doing something. Let's start taking the fight back to these, and we can do it lawfully and peacefully without anybody having to get hurt, not just doing it, voting with your feet and your hands. Stop going, picking the petrol pump at whichever one you decide. But you need now to decide which one it's going to be and start putting the mems out. From such and such a date, we are not going to no longer use the SL garages or the BP, whichever garage you decide.
This is
And
nothing.
then
This is
from
where the
that
egos
certain
have to
date,
go.
start boycotting that particular brand of garage. And the same, you need to do the same with the shops. Pick a main brand shop as the Morrison's, Tesco or Sainsbury's and do the same with them. And
Exactly.
let's start giving these people some grief back. Let's start showing these some people power. Fuck's sake.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the thing, and this is how it runs. Because again, a lot of people say about egos, because one group tries to start something, and then there's other groups that will do the same thing but on a different day. This is where the egos can go, and you can still have your moment. All you need to do, like I said, is it's quite simple. There'll be one list that tells you the top profit maker, and then it'll go down in succession who made the next biggest profit. So if all groups agree to use that modem, there is no reason why you cannot get your smaller group to go and protest at these garages as well. I mean, let's face it, most of you ain't going to be using them, so they're probably going to be empty. So you can go and protest these garages as well. That's what you should be doing. Use both. And then when you're doing this, you need to be submitting your feelings to writing to the government. And I don't mean a government petition, as we've just discussed. A parliamentary petition, you are signing as a dead entity. You have no voice. You have no voice.
Start writing as an alive, living man and woman.
Yep.
Start taking your control of your lives back and start showing these people that you get. I'll go where I want, and I'm going to show you how. We're going to show you how powerful we are now, because we're going to dictate which one of you survives.
Yeah, exactly. It's putting the power back in our hands. That's why you undergo diffidatio. So you take away the power of the crown and parliament, and you put it back. You give it to the barons, and then it's actually there in our law. Then the barons, constitutionally, are then basically accountable to us. So if the barons don't do right, and when you've got people like me and Gary, and there's other groups out there as well who do know certain things, if they do not start giving redress to the very things that we need to give redress for, and there's a lot, especially with our constitution, the English constitution stops, and this is the problem. They have basically laid the British the British corporation over us. So our English constitution is kind of considered by proxy, but they're going along with the rules of that corporation. It's what the corporation wants. So we need to stop that. Once we take that away from them, then it's the English law, it's the English constitution, and the Parliament and the Crown are actually bound by the English constitution. It's just it will not stop because none of you are actually upholding in that laws. None of you are upholding the constitution. You're just ignoring it. All these people, it's like we've had it with many people we speak to. We could be speaking to these people for 5 years, and then you find out after 5 years they still haven't undergone diffidatio, and they're asking if the barons are ready yet. It's like, well, the barons was ready when they invoked it. We have to do our bit, and that's what people got to get to realise. If you want change, each and every single one of us has to actually play a part in that change. You cannot pay someone to do it for you. You cannot wish that someone. I mean, there's never going to be just one person that comes in on a white horse and turns it all over, because it won't work like that. As Gary's mentioned here, I've mentioned many times, it's the will of the people, the overwhelming will of the people, like with a referendum. What's happened is, yes, the people overwhelmed our government and the European Union decided and said no. But what we've allowed to happen after that is we've then acquiesced straight after. So instead of demanding certain things and then submitting certain bits of paperwork that we need to do, we've gone back to just going, well, that's done. It's not done. It's called due process of law for a reason. You have to complete the process. If you don't complete the process, you will never get the end result you want. But as I said, we'll leave it there because we've been going on for quite a while as it is. Yes, me and Gary are going to actually do a show about the history of the East India Company, the British Corporation. It should be very eye-opening.
But in a nutshell, ladies and gentlemen, you could put a stop to this petrol crisis. You could put a stop to this bullying by the big corporate entities like Asda Morrison's. You could do it all. But it's just the willpower you need and the unity. I'll leave it
Especially
with you. We can't do it on our own, but that's what I suggest, that the people get together, decide which petrol station and which big corporate supermarkets that you want to boycott first, and do them both together.
but this means that groups are going to have a bit of unity. So, like I said, so it's basic. That's why I say it'll be online. There'll be a list of companies, and it'll be 1 to 10. It'll be who got the most profit. If everybody actually drops the ego and says, right, that's the best thing to do. So if we all go for that, we'll do that, and then you just boycott number one, then number two, then number three, 1 month, then the next month, then the next month, and then you can still do your thing in your little groups, and you can go and actually protest at these garages. And then you can actually, if you really, really want to cement it, they're basically profiting from our kind of the harm that's being done to us, basically. So it's profiteering is what they're actually doing. Our lives are being impeded. Our basic way of life is getting to the point where you'll see it now. People saying that they can't fill up with petrol, the electric's gone up, stuff like that. Our basic way of life is being impeded. And for these people to profit from that, it's called profiteering. So when you get the list of 10 companies and you start boycotting these companies, as a groups, spend the month as well, basically notifying that these people are profiteering. So do the lawful paperwork that actually creates this as a crime. Because it's not a
Yeah,
crime until it's highlighted properly. And going on Facebook or standing street is not actually doing it, because there's a process to it. Okay? They say the penny's mightier than the sword for a reason. Because the sword, technically speaking, has never really solved anything. It just begets more violence. But the pen is what creates treaties, which is a resolution. So start using the full process. Get that list. It'll be on the internet. If everyone does that, then it'll be great, because everyone will be doing the exact same one at the exact same time, and you will all make a difference. You can still have it where little groups of that lot get their protest together, and they can organise their own thing. But you protest the garage in your area or a certain area, or not being funny, take some that do a lot of business, and again do that, and then you protest at the garage. And as well as that, you spend the month constantly sending the paperwork to the government and to the companies and that lot, and remind them that they are profiteering and it's a crime. Do it to the
yeah,
police as well. All get together. All go to the police station and say, look, these are profiteering. Here's the evidence. This is what you need to do. Unless you do the full process of law and due process of law, nothing ever sticks. Nothing. This is
and
why they always
that's why,
win and we don't.
we've just come up with like a scenario what to do. But that's why we say we ain't telling people what to do. We ain't saying BP or whatever and saying, well, that's their idea. No, we've just give you the scenario and the idea and thrown it out there. You choose as people which company you want to boycott.
Like I said, this is the thing. We're only making a suggestion. Like I make the
Yeah,
suggestion of getting the top 10 companies profit-wise, because then if everybody's attacking the same company by not going
yeah,
there,
that's exactly
you
what
will
you got to
make a
do. But
difference. You will make a difference. You'll put a massive dent in them. And as Danny West just said, most of the big because it can be a win-win. As Danny West said, the big supermarkets have their own garages, so the
yeah,
supermarkets won't be getting people going to buy petrol. They probably won't get people going into the shops as much, because most people go and buy a bit of petrol. I'll do a bit of shopping while I'm here. It could affect them in many ways.
yeah,
So if you're
exactly.
going to do it, we've all got to agree, and this is where the egos go. But if you all agree, all right, we're going to go with the top 10 profit makers. There's no ego in that. There's no ego in that. Everybody will be doing the same garage on the same month, and if you do
Yeah,
that and all get a bit of unity instead of fighting each other for publicity and stuff like that, you'll all get it. You'll all
yeah.
get it.
Because we've said this from day one. It's not going to be me and Nathan or anybody else who's going to create and have the the kudos for all of this. It's going to be the people, because it's your actions and our actions as a unit that's going to get this country back. Because everybody, like we've said from day one, and we've never lied to you, it's going to involve everybody. Everybody's going to have to play the part to get your country back. There's going to be no, oh, leave it, let them do it. I'm still going to go to this garage. No, you ain't going to get it done then.
You'll look at a case in point, okay? We keep going on about it. Our Fabian arrest, okay? Now, the closest anyone's ever got to actually having MPs in court for crimes as high, and they are that literally the top 5 on our books, our law books. They've broken, i.e., sedition, treason. They've done it. The police backed us. The police backed us because we prove, as we got evidence of, we prove evidence of crimes committed. So they submitted it to CPS. CPS kicked it back because the people did not unite behind it. And this is what we do to ourselves. We all run off in different directions, and then we wonder why nothing's being done.
Like I said, it's all self-inflicted. If you want to get out of this, you've got to all unite. You've got to do things like this. That's not going to see things like this. You cannot say, people cannot throw this back and say, yeah, but we'll get arrested. And no, you cannot get arrested for
Not
using your, you can not get arrested. You can for blocking motorways.
Yep, and blocking roads.
But you can't get arrested for having the freedom of choice to say, well, I don't want to get to this garage. I don't want to get to that supermarket. You cannot be arrested for that, but you can do a lot of damage by uniting and all picking the same ones for that month.
See, well, this is where it
Start
kind of
using your common sense, ladies and gentlemen, instead of going hot-headedly out without thinking it through and landing yourselves in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, because I admire the spirit that's there and the will, but it's got to be focused in the right direction. I mean, this is the thing. This is the ironic thing about it, because if you are doing things like blocking a whole motorway, like me and Gary says, you're going to be blocking ambulances. You're going to be blocking people getting to appointments that could possibly cause them loss of life later on. The police will basically use the endangerment of life, and ironically, they will use the fact that you are stopping an inalienable right to travel the King's Road unimpeded. Well, so
they will
ironically, they will
use
it against you. Yeah, they will use it against you when it suits them. So I mean, but this is where people got to understand that they use it because it's a factor. But they're the two things that you're going to be facing. You're actually impeding an inalienable right, which nothing can do. You can't impede someone's inalienable right, and you'll be endangering life. So you'll start seeing, and this is the problem. This is what why me and Gary are saying this, because we want to stop this happening. You'll see the organisers being arrested, probably facing prison, and you could often find anybody that attended that will also, because it raises the crime to conspiracy to commit. And this is the thing.
Whereas when you're doing what we've just said, you're not committing any crime.
Nope.
Not one. So it's a no-brainer. But if people don't want to take it on board, people will report yourself. People keep saying, we want solutions, we want this, we want that. We're giving you the ideas and the solutions. But we haven't got all the answers. We're giving you the solutions, but we don't want to come out and say, well, let's go for BP and this, because you're going to have people say, well, you're doing exactly what them said. It's become their idea now. We're just throwing it out there. You, the people out there, get together and decide which garage or which supermarket you want to boycott, not us.
This is why I say get a list of the top 10 profit makers, because then there should be no arguments between groups. It's like, right, if we all agree to do this, then we're going to agree to do this one first, then this one, then this one. There's no arguments, and that means all groups can still do their protests, because they can go and protest the garages, go and protest certain things. You can still do all that, but you're not endangering life and you're not impeding rights, inalienable rights.
But that's what I've just said, Nathan. That's exactly what I've just said. That's why we threw it out there, so people could now mull it all over between each other and decide. So everybody's involved. It ain't just, well, Gary and Nathan said this garage or that garage. No. We threw it out there, the idea, people can talk amongst themselves and decide. They decide which garage, which supermarket. But something like that needs to start happening. You need to start coming together as living men and women and start showing these people you are out there. You're not a dead entity at sea. You have got a voice and you have got rights, and you're starting to use them rights, and you're going to put a dent in their businesses. Let them have a bit of suffering and a bit of, loss of profits.
Exactly. It's like
but we'll leave it there anyway.
Yeah. It's like Gary says, we're not doing this for an ego trip or anything like that. We do what we always do, and we're trying to give some sort of advice so people don't land up in prison or with some repercussions from something that they was actually good intentions, but it's used against them. It's just a suggestion.
We give
We're
you
just trying.
ideas. We give you solutions where we give people solutions where they're not going to get in any trouble,
Yeah,
but can
effective.
still dent these people.
But
And
again,
make
you've
a
got to do
difference.
again, you've got to do the paperwork, because this is the whole point. Most of this stuff with the energy, electricity, things like this hinges all. It's like with the Carta de Foresta. I mean, we've had this. That was 2 years after Magna Carta, because that was brought about because the same thing was sort of happening. We was taxed and we were stopped, and there was it was kind of made harder for us to go get wood and fuel so we could heat and eat. The same thing's happening today. Same thing's happening today. So you've got to do the lawful paperwork to actually bring something around that actually stop this. And it is profiteering. These corporations and these people, these CEOs, and this is where you get this is where the evidence and the liability lies. These CEOs are actually getting the big dividends, get the big paycheck. They are basically profiting through a crime, because profiteering is a crime.
And don't forget, this can happen if this takes off. This can happen everywhere in America. Costco and I don't know what the names of all of them are over there, and the big garage corporates over there. They can do exactly the same in Australia, Canada, America. Hit them over there as well. Let them see that the people of the world are awake.
And you
We ain't standing for the bullshit.
And you've got to stop doing things on the weekend when it doesn't affect commerce. During the week, you will affect businesses, you will affect a lot of things. But the weekend, it's your time off. So basically, they're laughing at you because you're doing things that don't really affect them. It affects your time, not theirs. It doesn't affect their profits. It doesn't really affect anything. It just affects you. So, like I said, we've got to have a massive turnaround of how things are done. Right, we'll leave it there because we've gone on for quite a while. Right, do you want to say goodbyes? I think Gary's froze again. I don't know. I think that froze again then. I don't know. So, right. That's been Gary Clarke. I've been Nathan Kirkton from CMW. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. Thank you for tuning in, and give it a thought. Let's start actually acting, people. I mean, you've got to start taking responsibility, because we all are responsible. We're, technically speaking, we're all responsible for letting it happen. We've all got to be responsible for fixing it. No one group or one person can take that responsibility when it's on all of us. And that's the thing. That's what people got to realise. It's you've got to unmute your mic, Gary.
We've got to. It's just booting me out. It's booting me out.
Oh. There you go. Right. Night, everybody, and we'll be back soon. Like I said, me and Gary are going to do a show about the history and how it all come about, and we're going to show you quite a lot of the details of why this has been done, and you'll see how long this has actually been planned and executed for. But until the next time, that's been Gary Clarke. I've been Nathan Kirkton. Thank you very much. We'll see you again soon.